Hello, you're watching Transbrations. I'm your host, Nishan Dion. Tonight's special guest is Tyler Stone, a pioneering producer, remixer, DJ, and vocalist based in Los Angeles, California, and recognized as one of the first female house music producers. Her career is highlighted by several top 10 Billboard Dance hits, flaunting her distinctive style rooted in soulful house, disco, and downtempo. After earning a jazz degree from Cornish College of the Arts, she moved to San Francisco, where she became a central figure in the city's dance music scene. Tyler has showcased her talents on legendary labels like Nervous, Large, Eightball, and Henry Street, and has remixed some of dance and pop music's finest artists, including Armand van Helden and Robin S. In addition to her production work, Tyler is an accomplished DJ, having held residencies at prestigious venues like the W Hotel and Clift Hotel. A visionary in the industry, Tyler continues to remain true to the core of soulful house music while honoring its rich history. Tyler Stone, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm sure you already know that house music is my number one choice of music, and having you here is just beyond amazing.
Fabulous.
Beyond amazing. So gonna jump right into it. It's been over 4 years since the start of the pandemic.
Yeah. You
What
believe
was
it?
your reaction to the stay-at-home orders?
Well, I was in Canada at the time, so it was called, I wasn't even sure if I could get home. So it was I mean, for me, it was a little surreal. My mother was ill and actually it was during the last 2 weeks of her life that I was up in Canada when the pandemic hit. And so I wasn't really paying attention, quite honestly. I was a little busy. And then, a couple months into it, I finally was able to get home. And where I was, for me, was probably the best place I could have been during a pandemic.
Home.
Yeah, it was weird because, I didn't want to, I could have stayed, honestly. I mean, some people probably thought it was crazy. I was on a beautiful island in British Columbia in my mother's beautiful house that looked over the ocean. And the pandemic, I felt like I just needed to get home, to my home, and
Wait. Where was home? Where was home for you?
Portland, Oregon at the time. But it wasn't so much Portland I had to get home to. It was my home, my physical box that I lived in. I needed to be there with my things and just my day-to-day. So as far as the stay at home goes, I was quite happy to be at home once I got home.
Home sweet home.
And everyone had a different experience, but for me, I was there with my husband, and so I wasn't alone through any of it. And we had, our friends, we were all doing Zooms and FaceTimes and cocktail hours. And I mean, I remember
Come on.
I decided
What were you sipping on?
Oh, okay. It was important because
Were you sipping on some old English 40 ounce?
No, I decided that if I was not going to be able to go out and have a proper cocktail made for me, I needed to know how to make my own cocktails. I had to perfect. I took on two cocktails, my two favorite cocktails. One, very, very simple, but not simple to make well, the perfect gin martini, which I did perfect. And then the other is one called a Ford cocktail, which is another gin cocktail that has Benedictine and vermouth and maybe some bitters or something like that. I can't remember, and they're both served up in beautiful glasses, and you could feel really elegant. And so, we weren't going anywhere, but we would make these lovely appetizers and make little cocktails and feel like we were doing something, and then maybe FaceTime with some friends. And we had cocktail hour every day.
With some jazz playing in the background?
Jazz, you got it. Either that or some like chill electronic music, one of the two. So the stay at home didn't bother me. And then I don't remember, like, we didn't, in Portland, there wasn't like you can only go out if you're going to the grocery store. We didn't have anything like that. I could go out for a walk whenever I wanted to. Yeah. So for me, it was different. Yeah.
It was different. What house song has stuck with you over the decades that you repeatedly played during the pandemic? Was there a song?
Well, I mean, I wasn't playing the old stuff during the pandemic. I mean, I was really busy doing remixes during the pandemic. So
Mhm.
my buddy Pierre, there's another man that I can add to the list that
Okay.
has kept me quite busy with music.
Pierre
Pierre
who?
Zonzon, who I met at my very first Winter Music Conference. Pierre Zonzon, Zonzon. I had run into him just before the pandemic at the last Winter Music Conference, and we reconnected, and he started sending me all kinds of remixes, like here's another one, here's another one. And so my thing at the time, again, as I was telling you, was like really trying to focus in, narrow, and be like, I'm only going to do disco house. That's all I'm doing. So if it didn't work for me with the disco house thing, I wasn't going to do it. So I did a lot of stuff for him. I did, some of it was more Latin fusion type stuff, which I love too. So, you know, that there's my
How many
Santana,
remixes did you do?
maybe 10. So
Wow.
yeah, so he just kept, I mean, remixes are fast, right? It's not like doing an original song.
Song. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
because you get all the parts in, and so you just have to kind of recreate something with something that's already created, as opposed to just to coming up with something brand new on your own. So it happens quite quickly.
I'm having a
Mhm.
disco revival. When the pandemic came along, the first thing my soul wanted to do was to write disco. It's the music of my youth. It's my comfort food. I needed to make music that lifts the spirits and soothes the soul to make myself feel better and the world around me feel better.
Yeah, that's it. And so coming back, you know, and you know, coupled with having just lost my mother, you know, I needed to soothe my soul, right? And it was kind of like I just shed everything else that I was doing, and I was like, this is all I'm going to focus on. So I did. It got me through.
It got you through. And going to go back to what we had mentioned earlier. Sophisticated dance music that lifts the spirits and soothes the soul. That's
Yeah.
how you started describing your music at the start of the pandemic that you were creating.
Yeah, that was my tagline. I think I had just redone my website too, and was like, I need a kind of a mantra or a tagline that kind of pulls it all together and really distills it down to what's the essence of what it is I'm trying to make here. So that was it.
Sophisticated dance music that lifts the spirits and soothes the soul. And your music did that for you at that time. Well,
Absolutely.
it still is.
Yeah, it still is. Yeah. And it
Mhm.
continues on. You know, and of course, that's the hope that I have when people listen to it. I want them to feel lifted and soothed. So,
Mhm.
you know, and if you think about, like, you know, for me to go dancing when I go to the club and I just lose myself on the dance floor, I come home the next day, I have so much energy. I am just bouncing off the walls because I have just absorbed all that great energy. So, yeah, so that's what I want to give back.
Super talented US producer Tyler Stone hits it out the park with new release Don't Count Me Out, a fresh disco tinge tune that transcends the ages, featuring honey smooth vocals from the Gem Fatales. Don't Count Me Out is an irresistibly silky, luxurious, and feel good track packing serious dance floor heat. That was not
That was an original that we did
right.
during the, was that during the pandemic? I can't
Yes,
remember.
2022.
Honestly, I feel like sometimes it still is the pandemic. I go out and I go, this is great. We're out.
That that was in 2022.
That was a great record. That the Gem Fatales, this was the label and Pierre Zanzon that connected us together, and he kind of orchestrated this one, but it started with just me and Ilan, and he came to me and he said, oh, Ilan wants to do this kind of a record, this kind of a sound. And I said, oh, I think I have a song like that.
Mhm.
So I sent her the track over, and she sent it back with just kind of a main verse, chorus with some backups. And I just was like, oh my God, this is it. This is exactly what I had in mind. And so then she has a group, maybe still, Femme Fatales, but the girls, she and her two sisters sing out together. They perform out together with the three of them. And so Pierre decided that her sisters should join her on the record. So they went back in and they re-recorded all the vocals, and they had, like, you know, thick, you know, stacks and stacks of harmonies for days on it. And so they delivered all that to me, and then I created the song, and then we got some remixes, and out it went. But fun track to work on. Really fun. Yeah.
And what time frame? A few weeks, a few months? What's the time frame for you to do all that?
Oh, this was long. Yeah, because this was not a remix. This was an original.
Because it's an
So
original.
months. Yeah, months it took. Yeah. I mean, just digging through all of the stacks of harmonies they sent me and trying to decide where everything was going to get placed and how I was going to pan it. And, and like I took different different parts that they gave me and applied different effects to different things. And yeah, it was a long process on that one for sure. But fun, super fun.
So you kept busy during the pandemic by, you said you worked on 10 remixes, and then you also had some original music too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did the one with Nick then too, I think.
With Nick Phillips, Moving On.
Yeah.
High class talent, Tyler Stone teams up with acclaimed jazz trumpet player Nick Phillips on the new track, Moving On.
That's the one. And that one, so that came out on Large, which is my first release ever on Large Records. And as it turned out, it's the first time they'd ever signed a female producer.
Correct.
In their 30-year history.
I read that.
Pretty amazing,
How did you feel about that?
Pretty, well, good and bad all at the same time.
Is that one of your top accomplishments, would you say?
Well, is it my accomplishment? Not really. I mean, I feel good that Large, I feel great that Large, a label like Large, felt that my music was worthy of having on their label. That was certainly an accomplishment there. When you talk about you're the first woman to do something 30 years later, I shouldn't have been the first woman. That's where it feels like, well, yay, I'm the first woman, but boo, you should have had one 30 years ago, So, or you should have picked up one of my tracks 30 years ago.
Come on.
So there's a little bit of a bittersweetness happening, I'd say, in that, it's to Large's credit, they owned it. And I thought that was great, that they were like, I said, is it okay if I kind of talk about the fact that this is the first? Oh yeah, absolutely. Go for it. So, yeah.
Either way, it was a historic moment for legendary Chicago label Large Music.
Yeah. And I was proud to be part of that historic moment for sure.
Right.
Sure.
Describing Tyler Stone as a pioneer in the original San Francisco house scene, label founder Jeff Craven says he's honored to welcome her and Nick to the label. Yeah.
Great label. Phenomenal label. So, and they continue to kick out amazing music. So, and so that track, what's fun fact, just got picked up recently on another compilation called, I think, Summer Sessions by Milk and Sugar, and is out right now again. So it's having a whole new life.
What an honor to have our track Moving On kick off this fabulous summer 2024 Beach Vibes compilation. Thank you, Milk and Sugar, for including us in your summer.
Yeah, that's the one that it's having its second life now.
That you mentioned the second life. Milk and Summer Sessions, Milk and Sugar. Okay.
Yeah, Summer Sessions, Milk and Sugar. So totally awesome to be included on that compilation. It's great compilation too. Like of course, the first thing I had to do was listen to the whole thing, and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome.
You had also said it's great to be part of moving the needle forward. I was so excited to create this for Nick to play on. He has a real knack for capturing emotion beautifully, and I knew he would bring all the perfect jazz elements to my disco vibes.
That's right. Yeah. And so there's my jazz again coming in. But Nick and I actually met, we were years ago, and we were on the board for the Recording Academy in the San Francisco chapter, which is the Grammys. He and I were the young kids on the board. So again, it's like one of those things where, you just stay in touch with people and just kind of when you meet someone and you get along and then you hang out and then you hang out some more and then you talk and you go, we should do a record sometime, and then you talk some more and then time goes by. And I mean, it's just these very things that happen so organically, you're not really trying to make it happen, but when the moment is right, it all comes together. And that's what happened with me and Nick. And he played on some of our stuff with the band too. And so we played like
with
that before,
Sutra, with Sutra.
With Sutra. But when I was working on this track, I was like, oh, I think just having a horn, like having just Nick blow. So the track actually, this is why I needed him, because I was feeling really inspired by Herb Alpert's Rise. And I just that song was just in my head, and I was doing this little kind of down tempo disco beat, and I was like, ooh, I need like a horn. I need my Herb Alpert on this, and I called Nick up and I was like, we got to do this.
Yeah. So inspired by Herb Alpert's late 70s classic Rise, moving on is a vampish, seductive, and smoky down tempo track that seamlessly blends elements of disco, funk, and jazz to devastating effect.
Yeah.
When did you become aware of Herb Alpert?
Well, I mean, when you go back to my disco days as a kid, right? That was such a huge, huge song back then. And I honestly, I wasn't one of my favorites back then. I didn't dislike it. I just wasn't one of my favorite tracks, but there were elements about it that kept coming back to me, that certain little bits and pieces of it that I just felt were really strong, and I wanted to emulate that.
Wow. So you mentioned that you served on the Grammys, but you are an active voting member of the Recording Academy, the Grammys.
Yeah.
And you've served as a national trustee and governor for the Pacific Northwest and San Francisco chapter since 1997.
Yes.
You have also proudly participated in the many committees involving the awards process, membership, advocacy, and community outreach. It wasn't until I was developing this interview, your interview questions, that I learned that of a Grammy category for house music, electronic music. I don't watch the Grammys. I'm not big on award shows anymore. I didn't know that there was a category.
Yeah, the category's been around for quite a while, actually. Maybe the last year it was introduced. They split it into dance, pop, and dance. So now we have 3 categories. We have remix, dance, and dance pop.
House music's golden era is having a renaissance. Beyonce's new album is proof of the genre's lasting impact. That was the title of an article published in 2022. What are your thoughts on the house music renaissance, and when would you say it started?
I come from it from a very different perspective, I think. And for me, house music has never gone away. And if I'm more involved in what would be considered the underground, and it's been thriving. And I think that, on the mainstream platform, things come and go. And so I think that it was having a moment, and that it was kind of a big deal, like when that record came out, because people weren't expecting, I think she and Drake and somebody else, some other pop artists were embracing house. My perspective is pop artists will always embrace music from different genres, as we've seen now. In fact, I even think I told someone, well, next she's going to do a country record. I had no idea she was going to do a country record. And then off she went and did a country record. Was she listening in on me? But I think that pop artists always embrace music from subgenres, and that was the year for her to embrace dance music. And because she's such a huge star, celebrity, and amazing vocalist, it transcended what was happening in dance music. So I think the press lobbed onto it. It created a moment for a lot of people who maybe aren't part of the dance music world to kind of come in and embrace dance music for a minute. But I don't think it had a huge effect one way or the other of what was happening actually in dance music. I think it was more what was happening in mainstream music.
And with that said, we're going to segue back into the Grammys.
Okay.
You know where this is going.
Uh-oh.
Tyler, you already know. Don't play me like that. You're playing in my face, Tyler. Oh, thank you for this. Thank you for this interview. Over the decades, over the decades, numerous artists have felt snubbed by the Grammys, especially African American rappers and Miss Beyonce. Beyonce has received dozens of Grammys. I believe she's received the most.
Yeah, she's I think she's an all-time high winner.
But she's never received the coveted Grammy for Album of the Year.
Yes, which is so wrong, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean, Lemonade. I mean, come on. That year, she should have won.
Adele, Adele even said so.
Even Adele thought she should have won. We all thought. I don't know who, like.
But I can't possibly accept this award, and I'm very humbled and I'm very grateful and gracious, but my artist of my life is Beyonce, and this album for me, the Lemonade album, was just so monumental.
I think that was the beginning of the organization taking a hard look inside itself at its voting members and saying, we have a problem, because the people, like, you know, it truly is a vote. It's not like someone is sitting on a little panel going, that one. It truly is people casting a vote in privacy. You're not allowed, nobody knows. It goes off to Deloitte and they count it up. It's completely separate from the organization. The whole point of the Grammys is for you to honor your peers and award your peers the best of the best. That's the whole point of it. And most people who are voting take that very seriously. So when you've got an artist like, I mean, and there's a lot of other artists that have been so-called snubbed too, but I think people don't understand, like, it's just a vote. Like, it really just depends on the voting body. And if you don't like the way that the votes are coming out, you have to get involved and you have to become a voting member, and you have to then cast your vote to make a difference.
Are there dozens of you guys, or hundreds, or thousands?
Thousands.
And you've been for over 25 years.
Yeah.
Is this like a lifetime gig? I mean, what's
no, you have to, I mean, so in order to become a voting member, you have to have X amount of credits, and you have to show that, you know, you've been part of the, you know, that you've released music.
Some history with music.
It used to be back in the day that before digital, that you had to have, I think it was 6 credits released on, you know, in some way, shape, or form, commercially released and commercially available. So when I started doing all my remixes, I mean, for somebody that was putting out 12 inches, that was really easy, right? And the other thing is if that's not even a full album. So even someone who just puts an album out, you have enough credits. Because back in the day, that was like 10 to 12 songs, right? So you have more than enough credits to become a voting member with one album.
That's changed now.
Yeah, today you have to have more. I can't remember what it is, maybe 12 or something. But you also, you know, because of the way that things are, and anybody can put a record out now. It's not just like, I mean, one of the reasons they used that criteria was because not just anybody could put a record out. So it really filtered out to make sure you just had like people who were really career musicians. So in order to filter that now, they've made a lot of changes, starting with increased credits, having letters of recommendation, even as...
Sounds like there's a lot of gatekeeping going on.
A lot of gatekeeping. And the reason being that I mean, Lemonade was a great example, but also other issues where they felt like, you know, our voting members need to be the highest level of the industry. They can't just be someone who's a hobbyist. And so they're trying to, you know, so through this, they tried to figure out ways that they could prove or show you know, that you weren't just a hobbyist, that you were actually, this is your career, whether or not you actually made a full-time living off it, that really wasn't the concern. It was more, you know, do you have a website? Are you touring?
Are you a professional?
Are you a professional? You know, so all the things that would indicate that you actually are a professional. So that's where they've been leaning, you know, since, you know, in the past few years. And I think it's been working, quite honestly, but, you know, it's just an imperfect system when you just are kind of throwing it up randomly and say, okay, world, submit your records. First of all, you're not going to get a Grammy if you don't submit your records. I think that's the first thing people don't understand. You have to submit the record.
Well, the label has to submit it.
The artist or whoever, but someone has to. Yeah, it has to get submitted to even be considered. So that's the first hurdle. And then once that happens, the first round of voting, which is happening right now or happened somewhere in here, the first round of voting determines the nominees. So all the submissions come in, and then the voting members go in and they vote on all the submissions. It's very time consuming, and you're not allowed to necessarily vote in more than, I think it's 5 categories or something like this. Again, that's to make sure people are voting in areas where they're an expert in your area of expertise. So you go in and you vote, but it's literally like, here's thousands of songs, vote for the 5 that you think are the best. So imagine that. Now imagine.
That's a lot of listening.
How many pop songs? Let's just take the pop category alone. How many great pop songs are out there? And so I think they increased the pop category to maybe be 8 nominees instead of just 5, because there's so much good stuff. But again, how do you pick just 5? How do you pick just 8? Right? So that's why people are getting snubbed. It's not because they're not good or not amazing. It's because it's so random. People are not snubbing them. They just don't have enough people voting for them.
Who's the oldest serving member? Is that public knowledge or no?
The oldest serving member?
So who's the oldest Grammy as a your role, what you do? Who's the oldest, not age-wise, but who's been on there the longest on the committee?
Oh, well, the committees rotate. So I'm no longer on the committee. So you can only stay on the committee 4 years, 2 terms.
Oh, but you're still a part of the Grammys though.
Yeah, but I remain a voting member, but I'm not on the board anymore.
Oh, the board.
You run for the board, you get elected to the board. And then.
But you've been a voting member for 27 years.
Yeah, voting member, yeah.
Who's been the longest serving voting member that you know of? Is that public knowledge or no?
I don't think it's a secret, but I don't think that anyone has a record of who's been doing it the longest.
So, and you kind of just rewinding, you were just mentioning about, you know, people being snubbed. So the question was, the whole point of this was, and mentioning Beyonce was, what would you say to an artist who feels snubbed by the Grammys? Or what have you said to an artist that has been snubbed by the Grammys?
Well, I would say don't feel snubbed, because no one is consciously excluding you. That's to me what snubbing means, that you're consciously being excluded. No one is consciously excluding you. They're just not consciously including you. And if you want to be consciously included, then you have to be part of the process. And you also have to take a look at, and you have to think about, you know, who's your competition. And this is not about sales. So a lot of these artists come out and they say, oh, but I had a #1 record and I sold more, blah, blah, blah. And it's not about sales. It has nothing to do with sales. It's about artistry. And again, some of the best records out there are not getting Grammys. Right. There's just too many. We only have so many places for it. Yeah. So it's not, is it fair? Absolutely not. But it's the best system there is.
But the Grammy is the most coveted award for recording artists.
Say it's the best. I mean, really, when you think about it, like it's the
Oscars.
You are among the best. When you win the Grammy, it's a huge honor, because at that point, the most people who were voting voted for you. That's all that means.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. You know, it shouldn't take away from anyone else who's out there doing really good work.
And their artistry.
Artistry. It shouldn't take away from that. Yeah.